Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Spotlight On, hosted by the Multi Academy Trust Association. Today, we're going on the topic of developing your people. So we've got a couple of experts for our panel today, and I hope that you're all having a good half-term break as well. This has been requested from our advisory board and also other matter members. It's quite a hot topic at the moment with a lot going on in the space, which is constantly changing. So hopefully we can answer some of your questions today on those topics. And just a bit of housekeeping to get us started, you'll have a comment section on your chosen platform. So whether that's LinkedIn, YouTube or Twitter, you can ask your questions to today's panel on that platform, and we can pull them up on screen, and then we'll look to answer them as best as we can. We'll answer them on usually first come, first served. And in between as well, we might have a few filler questions too. So to get started, I will introduce Andy Mellor, who is maybe a familiar face to this show now, but he'll give a quick intro on his background in education and how he can contribute to the conversation too. So I'll welcome Andy. Hi, Andy, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon, Matt, and good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's half term up here in Lancashire, so if you're on half term, then enjoy it. If you're not, and it's next week, then you've got a couple more days to look forward to, and then you've got a week. Yeah, my name's Andy Mellor. I'm the National Wellbeing Director for Schools Advisory Service. I'm also the strategic lead for the Carnegie Centre of Excellence for Mental Health in Schools. I was a head teacher for 17 years up in Blackpool and thoroughly enjoyed it. Had a year out to be the national president of the NAHT between 2018 and 2019. But my work in Blackpool continues voluntarily as I chair the Multi Academy Trust Chief Executives Group up in Blackpool, which includes organisations like Sidari, Bright Futures, STAR, Fylde Coast Academies Trust, just to name a few.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So plenty of experience there. And we'll come to you shortly with a question, I'm sure, Andy. And next up, the final panelist for today is Jack. Hi, Jack. How are you?
Hi, Matt. Hi, Andy. Very well, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too
Good,
bad.
good.
So yeah, give us a brief introduction to your work with Trust at the moment.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I guess just to sort of widely introduce kind of where I work and what we do, LMP Education, we're a national apprenticeship training provider with real focus on education and social impact, really specialising in working with multi-academy trusts and other organisations, I must add, but particularly with a real focus on MATs and the MATs sector. We offer over 20 funded apprenticeship training programmes for teaching staff as well as support staff, looking to really bring effective solutions to staff training and development trust-wide. So from teaching assistants to early years finance, business admin, HR, IT, etc. And really part of our mission is to support MATs to upskill their existing workforce, as well as helping them to recruit new talent through our apprenticeship training programs. What we're really looking to do is to sort of seek to provide guidance on how best to utilise the apprenticeship levy. There's still a lot of, I think, educating to do around the levy, and in particular, the sort of myths around apprenticeships, which still seem to be very apparent. So we're here to ultimately help with that and help MATs to create a strategy that really focuses on retaining existing staff by creating career development pathways, and in doing this, aiming to help MATs, I guess, retain some of their funding, some of their levy funding, and to prevent it going back to the Treasury ultimately.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, Jack. And perfect. So just anyone who is late joining, I'll just recap. You'll have a comment section on your chosen platform. You can put questions to today's panel and we'll try and get around to them. Direct your questions to Andy, myself, or Jack, of course. But we'll start with the beginning of the process, really, attracting the right talent, which is a real challenge, specifically in some roles as well. I just wanted a bit of kind of a scene setter from one of you on what that landscape currently looks like and how schools can potentially improve on that as well. Andy, we'll start with you.
I mean, I would say it's difficult. at the best of times, because having worked in Blackpool, I don't think you really. We talked about the 180-degree effect, which was the being up against the Irish Sea. You've got 180 degrees of your catchment in the Irish Sea, so we're constantly looking east for employees, and more often than not, there's a lot of recycling that goes on in a place like Blackpool and on the Fylde coast, because you're basically dealing with the same people, and there aren't new people coming in. Whereas I can imagine recruiting in an area that's a little bit more central. So let's say Birmingham, for argument's sake, or Manchester. You've actually got that 360-degree area to be able to draw from. So I think that has always been a challenge for schools in seaside locations. I think the other part of this that I'm hearing from schools, and the trusts involved in the meeting that I have with trust boards, is that it's getting harder and harder to retain those staff that we've got in school. Many are looking at other jobs that are less stressful and thinking I can get paid at least as much doing those jobs, and actually have a better work-life balance, having more hours to be able to spend at home. And indeed, some of those jobs involve working at home rather than being away from home. So there was a time when we were looking at people working in schools, thinking it was great because it fitted around children's school hours. But actually, there's even more flexibility now, being able to work at home. So I think we've got our work cut out, which makes conversations like this about developing our people and investing in our people and making them the best version of themselves really, really important.
Yeah, that's really interesting then, that you're in that different kind of catchment area. I've never thought about it like that, really. Jack, any thoughts on that as well? You speak to a lot of schools, a lot of trusts. How you, of course, help a little bit further down that line on the development side, but are you hearing kind of challenges around attracting the actual talent?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really valid points there from Andy. I think especially looking at it regionally, some of the MATs that we support, those roles are more difficult to fill for sure. I think what we also do help to do is to recruit fresh talent in for free through our apprenticeship training programs. So we actually go out to market through the government site on the apprenticeship service for our clients and actively recruit for them. At the back end of Q3 last year, we filled over 180 vacancies, which were predominantly TA, teacher assistants, business admin, finance, which are historically quite peripatetic roles. They move around quite a lot as to what they do, and whether that's a lack of CPD or whatever that might be. And that's sort of the beauty, I think, and what a lot of other people think as well of apprenticeships, is that we're getting people into work. We're then supporting them through their development, and also not only through a recruitment aspect, but also upskilling, what you just alluded to, kind of coming in later down that line, upskilling existing staff already in the workplace, providing them with some form of career development, dealing with succession planning as well. And really, I think providing people with more of a feeling of being valued, I think, in the workplace, and therefore helping with the likes of staff retention as well. So we come at it from two very different aspects. So we're very much on a recruitment side, but also very much on an upskilling the existing workforce as well. But definitely, we do have our challenges in certain areas of the country, but we are successfully, recruiting people on the Isle of Wight at the moment. So, it's a challenge, but it's something that we do, and I believe quite successfully. But I take it that yes, absolutely, there are certain areas which are much more difficult than others, for sure.
Something that I'm hearing at the moment with trust leaders is this sector at the moment is in mainstream news. It's always in the news, but everyone knows at the moment the situation of industrial action across the sector and at teaching level. How do we think that will affect things over the next year or two, especially when we're looking to attract the best talent to ensuring that this is a sector to be in and to have a career in? Andy, you can go first if you want.
Is going to create more problems for us in terms of recruitment and retention. There are so many different things at play, almost a perfect storm at the moment in terms of recruitment and retention. You know, and I did a little bit of a survey about 2 weeks ago on the impact that inspection has on people working in schools as well. And what we know is that because of the cost of living crisis, people are making choices to go and work in other jobs. They're doing it simply because they need that additional income. People are making lifestyle choices and saying, you know, I'm not prepared to put up with this stress anymore. I can actually earn the same amount of money by doing something that's a good deal less stressful. And I think one of the other things that I don't think we've really got to grips with is the impact of funding cuts in schools and the lack of funding in schools. Because one of the things that really drives people in schools to do a good job and actually brings them into schools in the first place is to make a difference to the lives of young people. And I think some of the tools to be able to do that have been taken away because, you know, schools just don't have the funding to be able to do that anymore. And I think in some ways we saw with the taking away of funding from local authorities, a lot of the services local authorities provided, schools picked up because they had to be done. And you know, and these young people are the people they see in front of them every day. Teachers are having to do something for those young people because there's nobody else out there. There's nobody else on the patch who sees them every day. So, and then having further down the line, having that funding withdrawn from schools, or the net effect is the same, isn't it? You know, the increase in fuel costs is a major issue for schools. So actually having less disposable income to spend on those young people, there then comes a point at which people think, well, actually, the one thing that brought me into the profession is actually something I can't do anymore. That making a difference. So I think that's getting people to the point where they're saying, you know, I've had enough. I'm gonna do something else. I think if you add inspection into that mix, and you look at the place that people are in terms of their own mental health and well-being, being able to do that job or not being able to do that job, and then have an inspectorate coming in and saying, actually, you're not doing a very good job, are you? When you know that some of that is down to the lack of funds that you've got, your inability to be able to develop the people who are on your staff. You know, some of that is incredibly frustrating and will also see people wanting to leave the profession. Possibly, you know, that end result being senior leaders wanting to leave the profession as well. So I think we live in challenging times, and I think we face a challenging couple of years ahead of us until something can be done to actually put some funding back into schools to allow them to do all the things that they know they want to do and develop their staff to be able to do all of that. Because whilst there's no funding to be able to support young people, some of the people who have supported those young people in the past will have left the profession. So it is then about upskilling people in the profession in 2 years' time to be able to do that work. And it's just a vicious cycle. There's an awful lot of different factors at play at the moment, which means that, you know, we could find ourselves in fairly uncharted territory. I mean, the other thing that sticks out like a sore thumb to me, and I don't know if this has been picked up as well, but we know that 40% of newly qualified teachers leave within the first 5 years. Now, some of those people might have been me back at the late end of the 1980s, if that applied then. And I carry with me 33 years of experience. If we've got people who are leaving the profession after 5 years, not building up that level of experience, and we have that constant churn in terms of staff coming and going, we're not going to build up that body of experience over the years. And I think the profession will be poorer for it.
So how do we look to improve that then, Jack? I'll come to you. Any out of the box kind of thinking that you have come across in the sector as to how you maybe helping with work-life balance or well-being, and ensuring that, like Andy says there, we're not getting teachers leaving in the first 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what it comes down to is attraction, and how making a multi-academy trust as attractive as it can be, whether that be to existing staff and providing them, as I mentioned earlier, with career development and making that very obvious within, and also making that attractive to possibly new recruits who are interested in the teaching profession or otherwise. There are, I think, a lot of unsung heroes within schools, the business administrators, finance leads, school business professionals outside of teaching, who provide a massive amount of support. And without them, a lot of the schools wouldn't stay open either. So I think that it goes wider than teaching, and support staff, I think, are often, not always, I hasten to add, but are often the ones that are kind of starved of that, development, and what will attract them and keep them in a role. We've recently been doing a lot of work with Ormiston Academy Trust, and the National Director of People and Culture, Justine Kenny, has written a fabulous article on Schools Week, and implore to sort of go out and read that. And yeah, it's not only recognizing the work that we do with them, but more importantly, how apprenticeships in particular have helped them fill skills gaps and offer further opportunities for current staff trust-wide, and really, really help with the staff retention and making the trust look like it is a very attractive place to work and for people to want to be and to stay and to progress within their career for as long as that might be. I also think that there is, sometimes a fear when it comes to training, that some schools put an awful lot of development within staff who will then go elsewhere and find a job somewhere else. I personally see that as a success story. Leaving one place, having trained someone up to then go somewhere else and carry on that teaching profession, or build upon that development that they've gained further still. I think that's a success. Obviously, that's going to leave a gap in the business, in the organisation, but that should be celebrated more than anything, I feel, as well.
So when we look at the responsibility of that professional development side, then how much of it falls between it being the trust strategy versus the individual school? I'll open that to either of you and to give comments on.
Yeah, I'll let Andy take that away, and I've got a few points there as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's real merit in the way that trusts work with their staff to develop them both within and across the trust. And increasingly, I'm seeing trusts working together to develop staff across trusts as well. So rather than just within their own trust, working across different trusts to be able to use different skill set to develop. And I think, one of the things that Jack was just saying sort of struck a chord with me, really, in that one of the best moments of my headship career was being able to see my deputy head teacher become the head of the school that I used to lead. Because for me, that's about equipping people with the tools to be able to do the job. And also seeing sort of senior teachers in the school going on to deputy headship and headship as well. I mean, I saw my role as head really as a way developing people so that they can service the system. And I think, Jack, that's what essentially you were saying, isn't it? Now, if you're working within a trust, there is so much more capacity to do that, and service schools within the trust, but also working closely, if you have that close relationship with other trusts, in the way that, and I do think the way that our CEO group in Blackpool works is almost unique in the way that trusts work together. And we've had people working within and across and leading different trusts in the town, and that sort of collegiality in terms of servicing the system and seeing the big picture rather than just your own trust and the success of your own trust, I think, is absolutely key. And I think we've matured as a system where we're looking at a far more mature approach to that now than maybe 5-10 years ago, where we were looking at competition between trusts, and not sharing staff. But actually, and particularly in places like Blackpool, I mean, working in Blackpool really focuses your mind on the task at hand. And essentially, when I brought that group together of all those CEOs, I was a maintained school head and invited them all into my office and said, look, we can do better than this. We can work better as a group of trusts across the town and combine our efforts to the greater good of Blackpool's learners. And that's worked an absolute treat. And if anybody is interested in knowing how that works, then please do contact me, and I'll share what we did.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a good story as well around the deputy head there, Andy. That's really good. Jack, you mentioned that you probably have a few comments yourself as well.
Yeah, Andy's taken it all out. Just some really good points again. I think it often depends on the trust, doesn't it? There are still many trusts out there who give full autonomy to their schools. When it comes to the likes of, recruitment, development, how they spend their funds, etc. And then there are trusts out there where everything is becoming more centralized, a word that's obviously been banding around for years and years now, and I think is taken up by different trusts in different ways, according to how they want to function moving forward. So I think really, dependent on the trust, that will have an effect on that topic. But yeah, I won't go over the ground already covered. I think some really valid points obviously made there by Andy already. And ones which I definitely agree with for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's only a quick one today, just with it being half term, and then also, we're a little bit tight on time as well, as a panel today. So, any other kind of final comments from yourselves? You're speaking with trust leaders all the time. Just anything else that you'd like to add to the conversation? Maybe a word of advice to trusts who will be listening.
Yeah, I'll fire away if that's all right. Just with one point, I mean, as a training provider, we sort of constantly get asked why us? Why should we sign up our staff to your teacher assistant program, for example? And we can sing hymn and verse as to why, but we often throw the ball back in the court and say, well, why? What value will it give to your staff? And I think more importantly, staff often ask us, well, what am I going to get out of it apart from career professional development? What's kind of in it for me? So the conversations we're having a lot at the moment are trusts then going away and thinking strategically about if they have a number of, let's say, unqualified teaching assistants, in order for them to maybe step up in pay banding or to become a HLTA, they have to formally do a TA level 3 apprenticeship, for example. And we've got a number of trusts now who have gone away and have agreed that with their unions. And I think that provides a real valid reason as to why further still someone would want to develop within their career and step up in the profession, as opposed to simply doing professional development. It gives them more of a reason to want to do that. And I think when it comes to the likes of succession planning, that's a really important takeaway, and something that is turning a lot of light bulbs on in the conversations that we're having anyway. And I think as well, just getting over, and something that we help to do is to get over those kind of myths. Again, obviously, I come at this from very much an apprenticeship angle, but getting rid of those myths around apprenticeships and the fact that they're only for young people fresh out of school. They're not for people who have been in a job role for 10 years. They absolutely can be. The off-the-job training means that they're going to lose people for a day a week. Not the case. So I think that there's still a lot of educating to do around that as well, and something that we are doing a lot of on a daily basis. And what we want to do moving forward, when you're looking at the funding that's currently lost, over 2 billion of apprenticeship funding has been returned to the Treasury. A clawback of around 23% of the DfE's total ring-fenced apprenticeship funding from 2017 to 21. That is a massive amount of money that is really going to waste when it could be spent on developing staff and providing them, with a form of career development. And that's, really, really important to us. It'd be interesting once the DfE releases the latest figures on what that total now looks like. But we like to think that we're having a real positive impact on that as much as we can.
Brilliant. That's really good to hear, Jack. And thanks, Jake, for your comment there around the great points made by both Jack and Andy. Andy, we'll come to you.
Yeah, I just listening to Jack, it reminded me of a conversation I had in my first few weeks of headship. And I remember somebody coming to me, I think it was a teaching assistant, who basically said, I've done this qualification now. Can I get a pay rise? And I think we are. I think the system and people's expectations are a little bit more mature now in terms of how we see professional development. And, you know, yes, it is a passport to being able to potentially push your career on. But I want to encourage trust leaders to think about CPD in a well-being sense, because what we know is that people do a better job if they feel fulfilled. And the way to feel fulfilled is to achieve success in what you're doing. And the way to achieve success in what you're doing is to be able to do it better. And CPD helps you to do that, that professional development. And, that applies whether you're a teacher, you're a teaching assistant, site supervisor, any group of staff in a school or trust. If we can actually have people feeling as though they're doing a better job because they feel to have mastered more and more of their role, then ultimately they'll do a better job, their well-being will be better, and it becomes an upward cycle rather than a downward cycle. And I think we now see professional development in a totally different light, both in terms of career progression, but also in terms of serving well-being.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great way to end it. Obviously, CPD being a huge part of professional development. We've just put on the screen there a nice time in an upcoming conference which is CPD accredited. So that's talking around a number of challenges and issues that the MAT sector are facing at the moment. But with change comes opportunities. I'm hoping for. So thank you very much, Andy and Jack. I'm sure that we'll see you in the soon future. Sorry, it's quite a quick one today, but hopefully we've covered some points that are really useful to the listeners today. Thank you very much to you both.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers. Take care. Bye.